So let's talk about Zinave in 2022. I mean, personally for me, it's one of the most beautiful places on earth. There's just nothing like it, right? Zinave has got its own kind of magic. But we brought this particular new kind of magic to the park this year. Let's talk about that.
What a special place. What a privilege to have, as Peace Parks, be able to rewrite a landscape for future conservation. If you look at Zinave and the glades of baobab and the remoteness and the dark skies, you think, you know, is it possible that these pieces of paradise still exist? And a co-management agreement basically is a partnership. So as Peace Parks and the government of Mozambique, we enter into a partnership, and it's a long-term agreement, 20-year agreement, and we say we're going to join forces and we're going to join resources to manage and develop a protected area. So the Zinave agreement was signed in 2015, and one of the very first things was to improve the ability to look after the park. It's a 4,000 square kilometer park. And once we achieved that, I mean, there was some 36,000 snares removed from that area, which is an incredible number. I mean, we've never seen that anywhere. And I think the context is important that we almost saw no animals. There was virtually nothing. And even with that, people still, out of desperation, tried to, you know, eat the remaining animals that existed there. So once that process completed of just getting good management capacity back into the park, the next logical step was to bring back animals. So over the last 5 years, we've introduced over 2,500 animals. And then the lucky number 13, if you will, or unlucky, but the 13th species that we then introduced, 13th and 14th actually, if you can think about it, was the white and then the black rhino. And it is very significant considering that this then became the first Big Five national park again in Mozambique after decades. It's sort of the pinnacle of conservation if you can have rhino, and the ability to protect them have arrived. Now, this was months and months and months, a year worth of planning to reintroduce 19 white rhino, I think 7 black rhino in the end, and there's more to come over the next 2 and 3 years as the first batch, with all the logistical operations linked to that, to move them over 2,000 kilometers was an incredible feat and an achievement, and we haven't lost one single rhino in the operation from when they were captured until they were released. It's also done very specifically to put Zinave on the map and to show here's a park that is well managed, that we are now already investigating the first opportunities for tourism investment, and with that process now can in 2023 hopefully launch the first tourism product for investment. So yes, it was a fantastic year to have Rhino back. Was incredibly emotional. If you take 2022 in review, probably for me one of the biggest highlights of what Peace Parks achieved is the return of the rhino to Zinave National Park.
And when we talk about communities, I mean, there was a massive amount of people that bought into this. For example, the president was there when the white rhino were released into the park, and there was something very special that happened just before that event.
Yeah, 2 weeks before the ceremony, where President Nyusi came to welcome the rhino and received them. So we had the rhino there in the park already. The first rhino was born, female rhino. So it was just fortuitous or that this happened. And then so President Nyusi arrived, and actually we only had the news then and shared with him the news. And it was wonderful to see the level of ownership by President Nyusi, and it was wonderful to see how he then gave her a name, Princesa, and also said, you know, this is my rhino, you know, as Mozambique, we're proud of them and we'll look after them, and that's fantastic, and we can't get any better than that.
Yeah. And there was a lot of the community members attended the event, and they were dancing and they were really celebrating the success. But it's also more around, so there's also quite a bit of work being done in the communities. I think the Hunger Project was launched this year and it has taken off.
in a landscape as vast as Zinave or Great Limpopo, we can't do everything on our own. And as far as possible, we work with partners. And one of the partners that we invited to come and help us, especially with communities and livelihood improvement, is the Hunger Project. It came on board full speed, totally committed, and within a very short space of time we're able to mobilize the investment of 2 epicenters. It basically becomes then a hub around which then can continue to invest, but through that just do a general upliftment of the whole community. And they've mobilized investment for 2 epicenters around Zinave National Park. So we're extremely excited to see what that brings over the next couple of years, and we know it will be successful because this is a tried and tested method that they've rolled out everywhere. But what we would like to do is obviously roll it out more into the entire landscape. And again, it's the principle of coexistence and making a link for people to see that conservation is good. We just concluded now with the help of ENI a feasibility study to launch a community-based forest carbon program over 1 million, in an area over 1 million hectares. And if you have that type of program where nature and conservation generates revenue to people directly, they start looking after those resources. So yeah, it's exciting times for conservation and exciting times for Zinave.
Yeah, I remember that when you're talking about the forest protection, it was eerily quiet in Zinave. You know, when I went there the first time, it was the same experience: no birds, no bugs, nothing. But you would often hear chainsaws at night. There was a massive logging problem. How have you addressed that?
Yeah, so I think firstly, the problem hasn't gone away. Logging is, especially illegal logging, is a serious threat in Africa. It's not just Mozambique, it's everywhere. There's a massive drive at the moment to extract as much as possible logs, timber of these beautiful indigenous forests. From an ecological perspective, it's probably far worse to lose all of these trees than one would lose animals in general, because animals normally you can reintroduce and bring back, but if you lose a big tree, you're taking away 250, 300 years. How do you replace that? It's impossible. And the sad part of this is it's poor people that are exploited. They are given about $2 a day to chop down their own trees. We've, as Peace Parks and the government of Mozambique, we've been successful now to stop logging in the park when there was quite extensive logging happening inside the national park by just straightforward law enforcement, pure law enforcement. But outside of a protected area, and with corruption and the vagueness around concessions and where they may log and where they may not log, these operators are ruthless, and they'll cut down the last tree. And the only way that we can see that happening is if you empower people to look after these trees and make it valuable to them. And that's the RED program ultimately. That's the community forest carbon program. So the feasibility study has been concluded. We've engaged with hundreds of people in the landscape, and the next phase will then be to start rolling out a program where communities are then employed through carbon credit purchases to look after their own trees. We've partnered with an organization called Biocarbon Partners. They are a specialist in rolling out RED programs, and we've joined forces and hopefully collectively we'll be able to continue to expand this program in many areas of Southern Africa where there are these trans-frontier conservation area landscapes, and where then you can then still look after trees, but at the same time empower people to do so.